How's it going, everyone? My name is Jakub. I'm a music producer from Indianapolis, Indiana, and today I'm going to be showcasing a hidden, or maybe even forbidden, sound source on the Behringer DeepMind 12. Now, if you're an experienced synth player, you've probably seen this trick before in a different form, but I promise I'm going to be taking it somewhere new, so if you stick around, it will be worth it. Before I get into that, though, I just want to take a second and say that I'm really appreciative of the positive response to my last video. All the positive comments and the subscriptions, it really means a lot to me, and it inspired me to want to get this channel off the ground and make it self-sufficient. That way I'd be able to showcase more gear and more music tech stuff for you all in the future. So if you would consider subscribing or maybe even joining the channel if you're so inclined, it would really mean a lot to me. But that being said, let's get into the video. All right, so if you know your synths, you might have seen this coming already, but today we are going to be using the VCF as our primary sound source, right? So let me go to a slot that I can overwrite, press program and hold program and hit compare to initialize my patch. And the first thing I'm gonna do is turn off oscillators 1 and 2. All the sound we're gonna be hearing today is gonna be coming from this VCF section. And you might be saying, Jakub, you know, filters are for changing sounds, not creating them. They're supposed to have an input signal, but analog filters have what's known as self-oscillation, which it's a byproduct of the fact that these circuits are actually feedback loops, right? So what's going on is the self-noise inherent to the feedback loop. If you push it hard enough with this resonance fader here, they start to ring, and that ringing produces, it turns out, a perfect sine wave. And I'll throw a oscilloscope on the screen as I do this in a sec, but that opens up a whole new kind of sonic palette for the DeepMind 12, because without this, we're just limited to our saw waves, our pulse waves, our square waves, and you know, we can approximate sine and triangle waves by closing the filter all the way, but we can't get a true sine wave unless we're using this trick. So this has been really fun for me to play with recently, and I'll show you how I set it up. So the first thing I do, turn off the oscillators, which I've already done. Next thing I need to do, I guess I've already done it, but it's important for me to note for you all watching from home, is that it is important to calibrate the VCF and VCF fine, right? So to find that, you go into the global menu, right? Go to, I lost my page here, but third or fourth page, you'll find this calibrate option at the bottom. Go into it and then go to calibrate voices. Then you're gonna hit to the right on calibrate VCF and hit to the right on calibrate VCF fine. Each of these routines will take a couple minutes to run, but once they've run, your filter will be in tune enough to play it like a real, keyboard, like a patch. If you don't do this, it's not going to sound good. So definitely do this. You only need to do it once for the day, and then once you've done it, you're set until you turn off the synth again. So I've already done that. What I'm going to do is turn up my resonance all the way, set my frequency cutoff down in like the mid 200s, and when I start playing, all the keys play the same note, and that's because we need to engage the keyboard tracking feature on the VCF all the way up to 100%. Once we've done that, we've got a playable filter all of a sudden, right? And I will quickly note before I go on that this is a voltage-controlled filter. It is not like the digitally controlled oscillators. The intonation is going to inherently be less precise and a little more unstable than the oscillators. I personally like this. I think it adds a bit of analog character and instability that I quite like. I think it adds a layer of character to the patches that I make with this technique. So I like it, but it's just something to be aware of going forward. So yeah, all of a sudden we've got a sine pad just like right out of the box with a couple swaps on the front panel. But I'll go ahead and show you some of the early patches I made with this technique. And then after that, I'll show you the forbidden technique that I allude to in the video title. So this one's called Sine's Wind. It's called that because it has this effect where when I turn up the mod wheel that kind of is reminiscent of winds blowing through maybe trees in a forest. It'll bring down the resonance a little bit and it'll engage some noise to create that effect. So otherwise it's just a normal sine pad. So check it out. Yeah, I like that one a lot. It's very warm, very inviting. This other one's very different though. This one's called Sines Arp Crush. It's called that because it's made with sine waves. It's an arpeggiator and it has some bit crushing. Very creative name, but check it out. This is one of my favorite ones I've made. Yeah, so obviously the mod wheel engages another upper octave, leans into a bit more delay and reverb as I turn it up. It's just very like fun. I think it's a good sounding patch. I think it is kind of classy sounding, and I just love bit crushing, and I love abusing the bit crush effect, the decimator delay here on the DeepMind. I get a lot of use out of it on my patches. Okay, last, I guess, level 1 patch I'll talk about is this sine lead arp. I don't know why I called it ARP. It's more of, I mean, the ARP I guess would work, but it's more of a lead because of how I've set up the modulation here. But check it out. I think it would sit really well in a mix as like a lead synth solo part. Ooh. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm playing there, but you can see that it would sit well in a mix, right? I think what I'm doing here is I'm running it, through some multiband distortion to add some more overtones, some more warmth, to help it cut through a little bit more, make it a little brighter. And then adding just a little bit of delay and some EQ with compression at the end to help it be more present. But what's really fun is this little, this is the classic setting the mod wheel to pitch wobble. But what's important though is we're not actually setting it to pitch mod on either of the oscillators, right? We're setting it to the VCF LFO. That actually controls the pitch here, right? Because again, the pitch is determined by the cutoff of our filter. So the LFO would change the pitch, not the the brightness. So just something to note when you're patching. So those are the level 1 patches. Now I'm going to move on to the the forbidden technique I talked about. So stick around, it's going to be cool. All right, so here's the secret stuff you've been waiting for. Before I get into it, I feel like I have to give a quick shout out to a Gearspace forum user by the name of Zapman. Zapman is the only other person on the internet that I've found who has documented and discovered this trick. When I stumbled across it myself, I went looking to see if anyone else had figured it out. Zapman's the only other one, so I got to give credit because he figured it out in 2011, and I'm just getting into it now. So credit where credit's due. Zapman did it first, but let's check it out. So we're going to initialize a patch and set it up the same way we had before. No oscillators, VCF frequency all the way, or resonance all the way up, key tracking all the way up. Frequency set to 258.9 in my case, right? So if you watched the last video, you know that I love the Uni Voice mod source, right? So I'm going to click that in. Oh wait, sorry, it's at the end. There we go. And we're also going to select the Unison 3 polyphony mode, right? This will apply to any polyphony mode that has more than one voice mapped per key. So back to the mod source or mod matrix, Uni Voice, we're going to map it over to the frequency cutoff on the VCF, right? So what we're going to do here is we're going to steal some concepts from additive synthesis. We're actually going to do some additive synthesis, I should say. The DeepMind 12 is configured out of the box to do subtractive synthesis, which means that we're starting with a really bright, harmonically rich sound like a saw wave, pulse wave, square wave. Then we're using the filter to sculpt away the high frequencies from that sound to produce something that's pleasing to the ear. Here we're doing the opposite. In additive synthesis, we're adding together sine waves on top of each other to create more harmonically complex sounds, right? The DeepMind is not configured to be able to do this, so we have to do some crazy mappings to figure it out. But once we do, it opens up an entirely new dimension to the synth. So let's check it out. We got the Uni Voice mapped to VCF frequency at a depth of 0, does nothing to our 3 sine waves. But as we start to dial it in, it'll sound bad at first. Sorry if that's piercing, but we've got these 3 sine waves layered in octaves, right? And now they sound like one sound again. They don't sound like they're playing a chord. They sound like a single tone. That's the power, that's the magic, I should say, of additive synthesis, right? And if I kill the release, for example, it sounds immediately like a toy organ. Because that's the same thing that organs do, you know, behind the scenes, is they layer their pipes in octaves or in fifths or in different intervals to create more harmonically complex sounds than when they're playing on their own. So we're doing the same thing that a toy organ would. So that's why it sounds so similar. But you might be saying, Jakub, that's really bright, that's really harsh. I've got the fix. We're going to map Uni Voice again, but this time to the VCA active parameter, right? And what that's going to do is the higher voices, so like 2 and 3, will be progressively quieter and quieter, almost like we're using a filter, right? Even though we're using the filters as our sound sources here, this mapping lets us control the high frequency content of what we're doing like a filter. So check this out, check this out. Here it is at 0, and style it in negatively. It's a filter, right? So just by the power of the mod matrix, we can make our own filter from scratch with this mapping. So I'll dial it in. And I'm going to hop over because I've prepared an organ patch for this video that uses, you know, the mapping I set up just now. But it adds some effects, you know, a little rotary speaker, a little rack amp for some distortion. Check it out. Like, come on, that's a dead ringer for an organ. And it's because it's using the same process under the hood. Now, of course, I got to give a lot of credit to the rotary speaker effect, which is made to make things sound like an organ. But still, like come on, that's so accurate. I think the coolest thing to do with this method, though, that you can't do otherwise on the DeepMind 12 is to create bell sounds, right? So this is taking advantage of another mapping wherein I map the envelope 1 decay to the Uni Voice here, right? So what that means is that the higher voices are going to decay more quickly than the lower voices. Just like if you were to strike a piece of metal in real life, those higher overtones would decay quicker and the lower overtones would linger for longer. Like, you know, on a piano or on a glockenspiel or what have you. Check it out. You know, this patch, the first time you play a chord, it's usually a little out of tune, but it will fix itself. There we go. Like, come on, when have you heard an additive synthesis sound like this on a DeepMind 12 before? I think this is super powerful and it opens up an entirely new dimension to the synth. You can play a lullaby on this thing, like, check this out. If you have one of these synths at home, I'm sure your mind is racing through all the possibilities. But instead of, you know, going through all my patches, I'm going to leave that to you. I'm going to leave you uninfluenced. And I want anyone who's watching this who has a DeepMind 12 to try this out because it is super rewarding. There are tons of unexplored, I guess, avenues and, you know, approaches to this. So I really, really encourage anyone who has a DeepMind 12 at home or someone who has another synth and figures out a way to do this on their synth to explore this avenue because it is deep, right? I'll play some patches at the end for your enjoyment, but this has been Forbidden Sounds on the DeepMind 12. I hope you enjoyed it. Please remember to like and subscribe and all of that, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much.